this. So, a lot of us take our old phones, right, and we save them for emergencies, right? Or we give them to somebody or we donate them. There's all kinds of things that we traditionally have been doing with our older devices, either when we buy a new one or when, we just want a new one. There's a lot of different options. However, it turns out that for a lot of old devices, starting next year, calling for help from them is no longer going to be an option. And that's sort of muddy water, so I wanted to talk about this before it happens so everybody can get a plan in place, and let you know how you can check it, what your options are, all that kind of good stuff. So let's get this started, shall we? Hello. So, phasing out the 3G phones is in progress now. And it's actually something that happened before with the 2G phones. And this is why I was rather alarmed when I found out about this. So, that, for those of you who might have missed it, and I will put the link here, I think it comes up. But there I did a show last week about how, the 3G is going to be shut down and what that means for people who are, getting deals on 3G phones right now, or we're not looking to upgrade, that type of thing. And so I gave the general advice that we've been giving people for years about what to do with your old phone, right? How to repurpose it. And the number one thing is most of the people like to keep one around because in this country, the FCC made a rule, but there's other places, around the world that made different versions of this type of a rule. But the rule was an old phone, even if it's not on a plan, was still supposed to be able to call for help. So in our case, it's 911. Your numbers may vary. And that's been fact. Like, you go and you look at articles all over the web, they're going to tell you that that's an option. Turns out it's not so much. And what really kind of ticked me off about this was the fact that I called the support lines for like the big carriers, so we're doing the 3G thing right now, to verify this, and every single one of them said yes. Now, don't blame the support people because it's not their fault, right? They were reading from the script, and that was the information that was given to them, which is all over the web. Fortunately, a member of our community reached out to me to let me know that he's going through the process. And as they've been going through the process, they found out that this is not true, and they were kind enough to share it with us, which was just awesome of them. And thank you. This is what I love about our folks here. So it turns out that the 2G phones that a lot of people have lying around as an emergency phone, either, in the car or in a drawer someplace, or maybe they've given it to a family member or a friend or a neighbor, just so that in an emergency they have an option, it's not going to work. Okay, this is a problem because the time to find out that your phone is not going to be able to get you help is not when you need the help, right? And so this is also going to happen now with the 3G phones. So everybody who's got 3G phones floating around, they're like, well, I'll keep it around just in case, that type of thing. No. So, no but, is like, because it's technology and that's how this goes, right? There is, and I put the link into the description here for those of us here in the U.S. So you can check out the Federal Communications ruling that says, and I'm going to read, okay, requires all wireless carriers to transmit mobile 911 E911 calls to a public safety answering point, SAP, no, PSAP, regardless of whether the caller subscribes to the provider service or not. Okay, so that's the blurb out of it, and the whole thing, like I said, if you want to read the whole thing, the link is in the description. That's why everybody thinks that this is going to work. And when I stopped to think about it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess that alarm bell should have gone off in my head earlier, because if they've shut down the service that phone would have used to make the call, whether you were on a plan or not, then of course it's not going to work, right? If there is no 2G tower for it to connect to, if there's no 3G tower for that 2 or 3G phone to connect to, then of course it's not going to connect. So that's a big problem in my book. So one of the things you want to take a look at is, so you want to look to see if your phone is a 900 megahertz to 21 megahertz. That's probably a 3G phone. If it's lower, it's probably a 2G phone, and you really need to get a new phone because you're not connected to anything right now. You can also check the last video I did, because in there I included, and I'll try to put that here. There, I put a link to a list that the providers had put out. That list lists the phones that will continue to work. So you kind of have to do it the other way, right? You're not going to be able to check to see if your phone is going to work. You're going to look on the list, and if your phone is not there, it's not going to look. You can also search online for the manufacturer and the model of your phone. You can reach out to the provider, whichever one you got your phone through. You could reach out to the manufacturer of the phone. There's a lot of options you've got in order to find out for sure whether or not your phone is going to fall into this category. But it's super important that everybody's aware of this. And right, what I'm here, right, because I do technology as my day gig. It's also my hobby. All my friends and neighbors ask me about technology, right? That's why I'm doing this, is because not everybody has somebody like me around. I'm now deputizing all of you to go and reach out to your friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, and make sure that they know about this too, because it's not getting enough press at all. And again, we don't want somebody that we care about or just know. We don't want anybody to be stuck in a position where they need help and they reach for a phone thinking it's going to connect them to somebody, and it's not going to. That would not be a good thing. So yes, so Marcus is saying if you charge them occasionally, it would probably not work anyway. Right. So that's the thing. So, I mean, that's the other part of this, right? No, and that is something that I, in my own circle, I would remind people, because I know a lot of people have an extra old device around, which is not a bad thing to do. And if it's fairly new, you're covered. You're good. And we'll get into that more in a second. But what we're talking about specifically here are the older phones, the phones that are already losing service anyway. 2G is already done, right? Those phones no longer connect to anything. So if you've got it sitting around, it's not doing anything. And 3G is now being phased out. And as of the beginning of next year, so I'm recording this 2021. It's like January, February, the 3G networks are being shut down, gone, nothing to connect to. Those are the ones that we're concerned about, because they will no longer have anything to connect to at all. Now, there is a caveat here, okay? So you can still possibly get connected to something if they are if they are Wi-Fi devices, which not all these are, but if they are Wi-Fi devices and they can connect to Wi-Fi wherever the emergency is happening. In that case, you might still be able to get help, but it's a cell signal. If you can get a cell signal, you'll get help too. Okay, in this scenario, you might get help. Again, not enough of a safety zone for me and for a lot of us, so that is the problem. Hey, Sammy, how you doing? So that's super important, right? We want to make sure that we're not using a safety net that has a big hole in it. That's the best analogy I can give you for this. If you've got one of these old phones, the odds are it's not going to be good for that. I'm going to give you some ideas on things that you can still do with it. You don't have to necessarily trash it, recycle it, whatever. But as far as using it as a security or as a safety net type of thing to reach out to emergency services of any kind, probably not. And that's a bad thing. Okay, so what can you do? You're gonna have to update the phone, right? You're gonna need a phone to have around. Now, like I said, we're talking about older phones here. Now, older is relative, right? It's not gonna necessarily feel old to you. There are people that are still selling 3G phones today, which to me is a little sketchy, because I'm pretty sure they know, and the reason you're getting such great deals on them, which a friend of mine did, is because it's going to be useless in a few months. Except as maybe, which we'll talk about at the end, but as a, extra fun device around the house. But as far as the phone goes, not going to work. But if you have anything that is more recent, it's a 4G phone or later, then you're okay until the 4G network goes away because of the 5G. For 6G, that'll happen eventually. But so just be aware that this is the situation. And so, old is highly relative, and it may not feel old to you. It may be perfectly functional, maybe in pristine condition. None of that matters. So you're going to need to get another phone. Now, again, I covered this in more detail in the last show, and you can go check that out. But just real quick to touch on it, if you've got a 3G phone, a lot of the providers have been reaching out over the year to get you hooked up with a new device. In some cases, they were giving them away. It sounds like that window might have closed. Shoot, I forgot to do this. So that window may have shut. You may not be able to get a free phone from your provider, but they are offering deals because they want to encourage people to get off of these phones. They don't want you to be without service either. Granted, that's probably because you're paying them for the service and all that, but regardless, look at it as a good thing. You might get a really good deal for a newer phone. Not the latest phones that were announced in the past few weeks, I can guarantee that, but a new-ish phone, which will be fine for a lot of us. So you're going to want to reach out to them, see what kind of a deal you can get. If you can't afford a phone right now, there are resources Certainly in the US, I'm guessing we're not the only ones because we're not that good at a lot of stuff. So I'm sure there's better deals around the world. But like, for example, here there's one called Lifeline. And again, that link is in the description as well. You can click on that. There's some criteria that you can, check to see if you meet. And if you do, they will supply you not only with a phone, but with service. So that's kind of a nice deal. There's another link that I included in there that offer, if you don't get like one of the free deals, that have like lower cost ones that either include a phone or don't, but they help you get you hooked up. So there are a lot of options out there. You're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to evaluate what's going to work best for you and what works best in the area that you're traveling in, right? So in the area I'm in, we have pretty good coverage, but even so, when I would go to visit some people in my life, there were areas where it was completely dead zone, which is why I went to Google Fi, because my Google Fi phone would switch around, from different carrier to different carrier, and I didn't have to worry about it. Huge. I love it. I'm holding onto it with both hands. But not everybody has that, right? A lot of places have just one carrier. So you're going to need to make sure that it's the right decision for you, it's the right device for you, and that it will cover you where you live, work, play, right? That's going to take a little research to get that dialed in exactly the way you want it. But I just want to let you know that there are options out there. You can also buy refurbished phones, right? So there are places that you can go, online or locally to buy a refurb phone. Just make sure you're getting a warranty. There's some guarantees around it. Sometimes the providers will, the AT&T, the Verizons, T-Mobiles, all those, sometimes they sell them. You could also get a burner phone, right? So you could walk into an electronics store and they usually have them just hanging up there, and you pick a phone and either it has a card or you can pick up a card, a SIM card to put in, and then you pay a certain amount and you don't have to pay again until that runs down. So again, and I'm happy to do a show if you want me to go into all of these options in more detail. Reach out, let me know, either here or reach out in the comments and let me know, and I'm happy to get into more detail about that. But the point is, I don't want anybody to panic, okay? There are options. You will be able to do it, and that's why I'm making sure we're having this conversation now, and I'm going to promote the hell out of this because we're in a window where you can do something about it. We're in a window where, because all the providers have announced their new phones and in some cases have started shipping their new phones, the phones that were new until a couple of months ago are now cheaper, which means everything else is cheaper. So it's a really good window, if we have to do it, to be doing it. Okay? Alrighty. So, let's see. Have I missed any questions? No, we're good. Okay, yeah. Marcus and I were talking before the show about the image that I used here. Let me... what have I got there? I got that there. How many people can recognize a phone that they owned here in this photo? I did. I certainly did. So yeah, Marcus and I were laughing about that at the beginning. It was a real. I was like, oh, am I gonna have to do this? Am I gonna dig up my old phones? Because I had this picture in my head, and I was like, oh, I found one. Love Canva. All right, so let's talk about what options you do have, right? Because actually, I forgot. Yes, we should talk about this. If you're like most of us out there, right? We're getting into the busy season, right? We're getting into the holiday season. Coming up with content ideas is tough. I created a list for myself. I relied on it all the time. Somebody asked me why I was able to get stuff out and wasn't hitting the wall, and I told them about it, and they're like, can I have it? I'm like, yeah, of course. So you can have it too. So this is a list I built out for myself of content ideas, because we all hit that blank page moment, right? We're like, I can't think of anything. We don't need to be struggling with that kind of stuff. So you can go here, yourtechcoach.net/content ideas. It's an ebook of ideas. Feel free to take it and use it and make it work for you. It's just there for you to have. It's no big deal. There's no cost. I'm not asking for anything. You do have to give me your email address because I have to send it to you. But other than that, and that way you're not going to hit the wall either. So there we go. We'll all be in a better position after that. Okay, so I did want to talk about what your options are for these old phones that maybe you're not going to be able to use anymore, right? Because the idea of donating them like we used to, not as useful, because the people that we used to donate these phones to, there were programs, and understand this is specifically for these really older phones, right? The 2G, the 3Gs. You can continue to donate your old phones, 4G and later, to the groups that give them to soldiers or to battered women, to folks that just can't afford them. Like, there's a bunch of different agencies out there that will channel used phones to people if you don't have somebody that wants it or needs it. So that's still an option for the newer stuff, but for the older ones, You can still get life out of them if you choose to, if you want to. If not, then you're going to want to consider, getting it recycled, flash it, get all of your data off of it, restart it a few times, do that whole thing. And then there's usually local places you can bring them to get them recycled, because you don't want to throw them out. There's a lot of bits and pieces in there that are really not great for the environment, so it's better that a manufacturer who knows how to deal with that is going to do the recycling. In some cases, you can send it back to the company that made it. Sometimes you can drop it off at like a Best Buy electronics store or something like that. Sometimes local municipalities will take them, and then when they get a certain amount, they bring them to a recycler. So that's certainly an option to think about. But if you want to keep using it, if you're happy with it, right? Maybe you found a great deal on a 3G phone and you're like, well, okay, if I can't use it as a phone, what can I do with it? Some ideas, we could do an entire show on this, but real quick, you can use them as a remote control. And I'm talking remote control for your TV, for your smart devices, for gaming systems, so on and so forth. There's usually an app that you need to download. Now, this is going to be for a new-ish phone, because most of these ideas are going to require some sort of an app that you're going to load on it. So if it's a phone that can connect to Wi-Fi, you bring it to a Wi-Fi area, you use your Wi-Fi, load these apps on there, and then you've got an extra remote control, because maybe you don't feel like fishing around in the sofa to find it, right? Or you're going to have remote control wars, right? I've done this from time to time with people. You're sitting around, you're watching something, and maybe you're bored, and somebody else is in control of the remote control. So you take a look at the TV, and you just very quietly on your phone do a little stuff, and then suddenly it's changing channels, and nobody knows why. I'm not suggesting you do this at a bar where maybe you want to see something different, especially if there's a big game on. But it's an option. And like I said, it's great. It's another way to control your remote devices, your smart devices. So. Yes, you can use your Madam A's and your Googles and your Apple talking devices, but maybe you don't feel like it, right? Maybe you don't want to wake somebody up, or maybe it's being pissy at the moment and it's not connecting. Having the apps on a old phone means that you can go and open the app that controls your devices and click on it and turn them on or off or whatever it is you want to do with it and be good to go. Another great thing to do with them is to turn them into a media device. Back in the old days, we had these devices, cassette players or, iPods or what was it called? Was it the iPod? Things that you would load music, podcasts, audiobooks, ebooks. Not for those. Those were all audio. And then you would listen to it. That was the only purpose for that device, was to listen to stuff. And it was great. We loved them. CD players, right? We would burn our own CDs and put our music in. It was great. You can now turn one of these devices into something like that. You can also, because they have a screen, assuming your screen still works, you could use it as an e-reader, right? So you could download your books from Amazon or your EPUBs or your PDF files, and you can read documents on it. So that's another way to go. Hey, Laura, how you doing? Good to see you. Thank you for cruising by. Always lovely to have you come by. Hopefully you don't mind me saying this, but somebody is going to be running the marathon, and I'm really impressed by that, and I can't wait to hear how it goes. So yeah, hi. Good to see you. All right, so just a couple more ideas. An alarm clock, right? Can you even buy alarm clocks anymore? I'm not really sure. You could just set this up. All of these devices have some sort of a phone on them, some sort of a clock device on them, a alarm on it. So you can use this as your alarm. Or if you're like me and you need multiple alarms to get out of bed because not a morning person, this could be an extra one to help get you out of bed. Right. That's it. Yeah, right. The Walkman, the CD player. What was the Apple one? The iPod. I never had the Apple one. Was it the everything was something. Was it iPod? I guess, yeah, it was iPod, because that's why we call them podcasts, even though that doesn't make any sense, but that's what happened. So the Walkman, all those kind of things. Well, actually, yeah, I mean, the Walkman kind of overlapped, right? Because the first Walkman were cassettes, right? And then they evolved where you could load to them, and then it was the iPod. Yeah, okay, thank you. And then you had the CD players, but the CD players you had to be careful with, because if you bounced them wrong, then the song would bounce. All that kind of stuff. So, yeah. I don't know, it's been an interesting ride, to be sure. Okay, so as an alarm clock, that would definitely be a way to go, keep you on track. Also, you can set timers and that kind of stuff, so maybe keep one in the kitchen so that, maybe you don't have a timer, maybe you need multiple timers, like, Thanksgiving is coming here in the U.S., and, kitchens tend to go berserk at that point, and that one kitchen timer isn't enough. So you could have different ones, right? Because you got these old phones laying around. So you could set one for the mashed potatoes, one for the meat, one for the rolls, and be all good. And you can even set them with different tones so you know which one it is when they go off. Could be handy. You can also turn them into portable gaming devices. Especially retro gaming is really good because usually those are things that you can download onto the device and they don't even need Wi-Fi to work, but Wi-Fi would work too. So this is something as far as connectivity. So again, these old devices that we're talking about, the 2Gs, the 3Gs, someday it's going to be 4G, but not today. You could still possibly use them on Wi-Fi as a home VoIP device, so voice over IP. So basically that or a video phone. So think about, Skype and Zoom and Hangouts and all that kind of stuff. So it is another way for people to reach out and connect. It's not necessarily going to be an emergency services connection. It depends on the service. Like, for example, if you put a Google phone number on here, I think now those will connect to 911, but read the fine print. Make sure you know what you're doing. But again, it's just giving life to an old device. If you're geeky or you've wanted to be geeky, but you didn't want to wreck a very good device that you've got around, an old device is a great thing to test on, right? If you've been curious about maybe side-loading apps to see what that's like, getting things that aren't in the store, be careful. You don't want to bring viruses into your, environment. But if you're curious about it, there are some safe ones that you can do. If you've always been curious about, maybe trying a different ROM, so that's like the brains, it's the operating system on the device. You could try that. Like there's, maybe you've always been curious about, those iFixit kits and you want to give one a try, but not on a device that you care about. Well, here you go. No harm, no foul, right? If you've always been curious about what it's like to change the glass in one, you can try it. It doesn't work? Well, you tried. One more thing, and like that, you could go into the App Store and you can find all kinds of devices, all kinds of apps to make these devices do all kinds of cool things. Usually single purpose, but still fun. One that I've been playing around with is a smart home sensor, right? So you can actually use an old phone to, listen for sounds, a baby crying, dog barking, that kind of thing. There's apps that will let you use it to turn on a lamp when things get dark. Just as an example, there's like a Smart Things app that you can use for this kind of stuff. So there are options out there, but if you don't take anything else away from this conversation, please, 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 go check any devices that you've got laying around just in case you need them. Make sure that they are going to be there and functional for you if you do have an emergency or if somebody has an emergency. And you can go, there's a lot of different ways to check that I listed earlier. So if you're just jumping in now, you can go back and watch the beginning. But you want to make sure beforehand. And then when you've established that you do have an emergency device around, and I do really encourage people to do that, make sure you charge it once in a while, because if the battery's dead, it's still not going to be helpful for anybody. So that is just another thing to keep in mind. It's sort of like, if you have a backup battery of some sort or whatever, you just want to, I try to do it like once a quarter. I'm happy if I do it twice a year. Go and top off the charge on those kinds of things. I have backup batteries that I keep around for when the power goes out or for devices if I'm traveling or whatever. And you want to make sure that they're already charged and ready to go. Make sure you keep a cable handy with them. You literally could just, wrap it around it or zip tie it to it or Velcro it, to it or whatever. Because that's the other things you want to make it easy for you to keep that device up to date. John is making a recommendation here, right? So older phones are great for game development to test a game. Absolutely. Totally a great way to go with that. I wonder why he said that. We know why he said that. That's great. Yeah, but that's a great point. Yep. So there we go. Please, please, please go. First of all, if you don't have a backup device, keep an eye out for one. Maybe buy a refurbished, whatever. See if somebody has a phone that they don't need anymore that you could take. Then make sure that it's going to work for you. Make sure that it's going to connect the way you need it to. Ideally, you're going to have an old phone around that can make a cell connection in an emergency. But now we know that the 2G and the 3Gs don't do that, even though there's a lot of misinformation out there about the fact that they can. On Wi-Fi, maybe. Cell, no. That's the clearest statement I can make about this. All right? So let's see. Do we have any... We're all caught up on questions? Awesome. Okay, so there you go. I'm here every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with a different topic. You are always welcome to come and join. If you have a question, if you have a topic you want me to cover, go visit yourtechcoach.net. and let me know what that is, and I'm more than happy to do it. Just if you have a question, make sure you let me know how to get back in touch with you if it's an emergency or if it's time sensitive, so that I can get back in touch with you. Otherwise, I have to wait and do it on a show. Also, if you want to stay up to date with what's going on, when the shows are, what the topics are, you can join the mailing list, yourtechcoach.net/mailing list. All right, everybody, thank you so much for cruising by. I do appreciate it, and we will talk again next week. Hope you have a great weekend. Bye.